We'd like to begin this podcast by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Whadjuk Noongar people, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging.
This episode of Talking Couch Potatoes is brought to you by Henry Houndwear, the brand that all the best dressed hounds are wearing. To find yours, go to henryhoundwear.com.au.
Hello, Maleficent.
Hi, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good.
Yeah,
Yes.
back for Talking Couch Potatoes. I love the fact that this podcast is built to instigate and support and enable change specifically in WA, Western Australia, to get rid of this outdated, inhumane, unsustainable sport. I get a little bit of a tickle, though, about the fact that the word is spreading right across the globe, Mel. And there's a couple...
Have you got an update?
We've got an update. Two new countries have joined us just recently.
Does one start with E?
Unfortunately not. I know.
Okay.
That's what we're... That's
keep
all
working on that.
It's all Mel cares about. We'll get there, Ethiopia, if you're listening. Well, you're not, frankly. And that's why anyone who lives... Got a friend in Ethiopia.
Shout out to my son, who has people in Ethiopia.
Yes, indeed.
Having been born there.
But for now, Vietnam. Hi, Vietnam.
Oh, very good.
So welcome aboard. Great to have you listening. And New Caledonia.
Oh, wow.
So that brings us 45 countries around the globe listening to our cute little podcast. So also, Mel, we know that we're very lucky to be sponsored by Henry Houndwear.
Yeah.
And they're awesome people.
Yeah, lovely.
Every time I go to an event or a fundraiser, always catch up with Warren.
That's right.
Yeah?
Yep. And very often Jo's there, but Warren's got her working in the shop a lot, making these beautiful garments for our greyhound.
Houndwear. We just bought another one the other day. If you haven't checked it out, go to henryhoundwear.com.au.
Cooler weather, it's a perfect time.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah, stock up. Have a listen to the episode we had a chat to him on, which was episode 38, and check them out. If anyone else is out there, especially in the hound space, and wants to sponsor a few episodes, we'd be open to that, wouldn't we, Mel?
Absolutely.
Because we don't take the money.
No.
I don't get a penny out of it.
Me neither.
Still doing this for love.
That's right.
So if you want to get on board, it just goes to supporting Free the Hounds.
Yep.
Yeah, that's all.
Exactly.
Covers a bit of the costs of doing this stuff.
Yep.
Get in touch, podcast at freethehounds.com.au. And you could be a little sponsor too, and we might even interview you if you like.
We'd love to. And also, if you have something that you would like to talk about with greyhounds, or have a greyhound at home that you would like to talk about, we're always happy to take ideas.
Yeah.
Sing out and say, hey guys, can I come and talk to you?
What's going on in the world of Free the Hounds?
Well, state election, finally, everything's done and dusted. Amanda Dawn from AJP was sworn in.
How about that?
Yep.
How about that?
Yesterday.
Animal Justice Party, first ever seat in the upper house.
In
Frankly,
Western Australia, yep.
I'd like to say it was down to the amazing interview we did with Amanda.
I think so.
I think that pushed her over the line, I reckon.
Definitely.
So congrats, Amanda. Well done.
Yeah. And Nana Bingo, did you enjoy your night?
Oh, I was incognito, so I don't know if many people recognise me.
We recognised you.
Yeah, I had my little silk jammies on, a little pink Nana gown.
It was so much fun.
Twin set with my purple twin set that I had going. Yeah, I loved it. And I think I've stayed within a modicum of respectability as well.
Yeah.
I was going to do a bit of a Nana flash now and then. Didn't do it, Mel. Didn't do it.
Thank God.
Yeah.
No. But yeah, thank you to everybody that came along. It was a brilliant night, and to Nana for being such an awesome Nana. It was a sellout, so it was fabulous.
And if you weren't there, frankly, you
missed out.
What else we got, Mel?
We're just sort of waiting now on to see how Parliament plays out, and hopefully, fingers crossed, everything crossed, that an inquiry, the recommended inquiry by the Estimates Committee in the former Parliament will be carried through into this one.
Yeah. And we had a chat to Brad not long ago. He's going to work on making sure they don't forget about that. Hopefully Amanda will be there as well to put things on
Hopefully
the front of people's minds.
Yeah, she'll try and really support that.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks,
just
Brad.
make everybody aware that it really needs to occur.
Awesome. And the inquiry, it's really shining a light. That's what Free the Hounds want, isn't it?
Yep.
To shine a light. And you've said many times, Mel, if they can show that this is all sustainable, then that's a different argument, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But at the moment, it's all kept a little bit the
same people that run it and earn the funds from these dogs running or get paid their salaries from them are the same people that are looking at welfare, integrity and the gaming.
Yeah.
So I don't see any kind of industry that would allow that.
Yeah.
And it's government
Yeah.
owned and run.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's got to be checks and balances.
So shine a light on it and see what comes out of the inquiry.
100%.
My best guess is, given the research that you've uncovered, Mel, and other CPG and other people have uncovered, it's not going to look pretty.
And if they come up with that and still decide to go on with it, then okay, but take some responsibility and stop saying how great you all are and how much you love your animals and all the rest of it, and how it's just one bad apple.
Yeah.
And admit that you are okay with dogs dying, you are okay with dogs being kept in conditions that a lot of the public don't agree with, and that you are okay that they are going to come out, have issues, possibly spend a lot of time in kennels because they can't find a home, and that they're going to put other dog breeds out of a home.
Yeah, yeah. So that's endemic. This few bad apples argument, and it gets trotted out quite often by the pro racers. And because wasn't there not long ago, somewhere around Australia, Trainer of the Year turned out, when we looked at the record, was a pretty dodgy apple at best.
Yeah. Well, we've had an inductee into the Hall of Fame here. She's had previous charges against her.
So why would if it's just a few bad apples, why wouldn't they pick the best apples to make Trainer of the Year?
The sport is so small and there's so few people that are actually any good at it, I guess, that there's not enough people to choose from.
Yeah.
But also they probably got to that position by being shonky.
I guess the point for me is a few bad apples implies that generally speaking, things are going well and things that are bad that happen are an aberration, abnormal to the norm. But what we've seen is that the norm is regular broken legs, regular dead dogs. We've spoken to vets. The norm is regular sort of poor health in terms of teeth, in terms of eyes, the stuff that doesn't make them go faster.
Yep.
So how can they argue that is endemic to the sport? It's endemic that they won't spend their money on teeth and eyes, and it's endemic that the dogs will be injured and killed and da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
So what's this? It's just a few bad apples. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. And you know what? For a tree to grow, it has to have the conditions to grow.
Right.
So if you've got bad conditions and you're getting bad apples, it's the conditions that the tree's growing in that's causing that.
That's a really good point, because if a few bad apples, you just pick the bad apples off and off you go. But if the tree's poisoned, you're just going to keep getting, as a par for the course, shitty apples. Yep. So why don't we uproot the tree,
put it through the chipper and use it as mulch for some other beautiful tree to grow.
Yeah, a beautiful tree of love and joy and peace, not a tree of pain and suffering.
No more apple trees.
No more apple trees. Peaches?
Maybe. Oranges?
Orange, you going to end this terrible industry?
Yes.
Thank you very much. All right, Mel.
Yes.
We always get to speak to awesome people. I keep going on about it. We had a chat with Andrea Pollard, who was president of the Coalition for the Protection of Greyhounds, referred to as CPG, back in episode 11. That was an awesome chat, because they're wonderful allies, aren't they, of Free the Hounds? And they do incredible work as well.
All over the country.
All over the country. So they're kind of like the national peak body, would you say, Mel, for greyhound sort of advocacy? Because
WA is set up differently, the way that the actual controlling body and the Greyhound Racing Association sit within government here. Free the Hounds have taken on WA, and Tasmania's on their own as well. But they do the lion's share of the country. But today we're lucky enough to speak to the brand new president of CPG, Coalition for the Protection of Greyhounds, Amy McMahon. She'll be coming up soon. Absolutely. Can't wait. All right, Mel, it's time to have a chat to another extraordinary supporter, advocate for the hounds and friend of Free the Hounds. She is the brand new president of Coalition for the Protection of Greyhounds, Amy McMahon. And Amy has her own little buddy who is an 8-year-old greyhound. She's previously an MP in Queensland who was big in the advocacy space for housing and homelessness, advocate for funding for education and state schools. I know she was interviewed for the Little Grey film, and we interviewed Indy Davies not long ago on the podcast, if you want to listen to that one. That's right. But for today, we get to speak to Amy. Hi, Amy. How are you? I'm good, thank you. How are you? Pretty good. I'm pretty excited. I'm always a bit flushed by the people Mel knows, and to talk to people who actually have some real influence and put their money where their mouths are and their time and their energy. Yeah. So, really looking forward to talking to you. Oh, that's very kind of you. And Mel's with us here too, Mel. Yeah. Hi, Amy. How you going? G'day. Good. Thanks for having me on today. No problem. Thanks for joining us. And how's Buddy going?
He is good. He is just on the couch.
Of course.
We just went down to the West End Market to have a coffee. And so lots of activity, lots of people giving him pats. And that was pretty much tucking him out for the rest of the day. So he's in his usual spot on the couch.
That's beautiful. And I love the name Buddy. That's so sweet.
Yeah. One of the funny things is because Buddy is like a regular thing that people will say to any animal. And I sometimes think, how do you know my dog's name? They're just saying, oh, hi, Buddy. Hi, Buddy. And he will respond positively to anyone who wants to give him a pat.
That's pretty good.
That's so funny. I hadn't thought of that.
That's clever.
Wow. He must feel so special when he goes out.
Yes.
Everybody knows my name.
Yeah, everyone wants some attention from him.
That's brilliant. Amy, as I said, you're brand new president of CPG.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Yeah, I guess I've been a greyhound advocate for some time. I have a greyhound, and as you probably know, for a lot of people, that is your pathway into more advocacy around greyhound racing. A lot of people get greyhounds having an idea that this industry is not great, but once you get your own greyhound and you learn about your dog's history and you learn a bit more about the sector, I think it kind of radicalizes a lot of people. You realise just how awful this industry is. You realise just how much power the gambling racing sector actually have. You see how much money is going into greyhound racing, and you start to understand a number of dogs that aren't able to benefit from getting safe homes. Apparently wasn't very good on the racetrack, and so was retired fairly early and now rehomed to me. And I feel very lucky that he made it through, because not all greyhounds make it through. And so when I got Buddy, I had a sense like, this isn't a great industry, but getting Buddy really triggered me to learn a lot about it. And I had the opportunity to represent a seat in the Queensland Parliament. In that time, also learned a lot more about greyhound racing and tried to use what opportunities we had to speak up in the Queensland Parliament to talk about the kind of harms of greyhound racing. And been very sadly lost the seat. But there are still opportunities outside of Parliament to be pushing for change. And so then I got contacted by the Coalition for the Protection of Greyhounds, and I feel so lucky to now be the president and working alongside some of the most talented and knowledgeable and staunch activists that I have ever come across. I've met, obviously, activists in lots of different sectors, but these volunteers working for the greyhounds are truly some of the most spectacular campaigners and advocates that I've ever met. Their level of knowledge, their level of commitment, their attention to detail, and a non-stop advocacy for the greyhounds has been so impressive. I am learning a lot from the other advocates and volunteers involved with the Coalition for the Protection of Greyhounds, and a lot from volunteers who are working in different greyhound advocacy organisations as well, and rehoming organisations. So that has been my pathway into bigger greyhound advocacy, and my pathway into the Coalition for the Protection of Greyhounds.
I couldn't agree more. The greyhounds advocates and volunteers, and like greyhounds, a unique breed, aren't they? And greyhound owners tend to be a unique breed. They affect you in a very different way. I think on one level you understand the unique temperament of these creatures, and also, as you said, when you start to discover what we do to these gentle creatures, it almost is the perfect storm that makes you want to get up and say, stop.
Yeah. I have moments where I look at Buddy and like my heart skips a beat thinking that he was ever forced to do that, because he is literally such a couch potato. He's such a placid, gentle dog. I can't imagine him being, stuffed into a box and forced to race.
Yeah.
And even thinking about that now, like I can feel my heart rate go up and makes me really hungry.
It's a unique experience, and we need to protect them and speak for the voice that they don't have. In terms of speaking up for the voiceless, there's never a quiet moment for you guys. What's coming up? What's on the agenda?
You're right. It really never stops. At the state level, individual advocacy around particular issues going on in the greyhound sector. And part of what I am hoping to do is channel all this energy into a political strategy that is putting pressure on state government as we come up to various state elections. It's useful to remember that political parties really only speak the language of votes and seats, and building up the kind of widespread public pressure countrywide. So we were building a pressure campaign in the lead up to the federal election. We got people to write letters to their sitting federal MPs talking about some of the kind of specific things that don't sit at the federal government level. And we just compiled some of the information that we had gotten from different parties and looking at parties' political stances on various questions to put out a scorecard to show people where do the various political parties sit on the question of greyhound welfare. And so now that the federal election has passed, I think South Australia will be the next off the bat. They will have their state election early next year. And so in the lead up to that, trying to build up the pressure on the ground in South Australia, be drawing as many people as we can into the movement and finding ways to make this an election issue in South Australia. There'll obviously be lots of different other issues that people are concerned about, but finding ways that we can draw people into the question of greyhounds. And alongside that, letting people know that what goes on in the greyhound racing sector. I regularly come across people who say, I didn't realise we still had greyhound racing. Yeah. So that's a two-pronged approach, building up that political pressure and getting information out there so that people know this is what's still going on. It's still going on with the benefit of taxpayer money. So that's a sort of broader strategy. And then in the meantime, a lot of advocacy going on individual issues around safety issues at particular tracks, looking at rehoming. We have so many greyhounds that aren't able to be safely moved into living homes, looking at particular bits of regulation and legislation about how greyhounds are treated. So it's sort of micro level advocacy sitting below this broad advocacy to put pressure on various state and territory governments.
Yeah. What you said too that people are saying to you is they weren't even aware that this is still a thing in this country. We get that all the time. And that's it just shows you, I think, how many people that aren't aware of it and how many people really are against it. That's something that we come across all the time.
Yeah, and I think this is something that the sector purposefully stokes. We know that in so many states, if there is an accident or a death on a track, in a lot of states that footage is pulled. And so there's not good footage of what actually happens on the greyhound track. And so people will only ever see the bits where the dogs are just running in a neat straight line. And so the industry, I think, purposefully suppresses information so that people don't really know what's going on. And you really only know the greyhound racing happens if you go to a pub and you can see the races on TV. But I think a lot of people wouldn't know that this could be a track that is just a few suburbs away from you, even in urban areas. Like here in Brisbane, if you go down to the Albion track, it's not super clear what's going on the other side of the wall. They don't have big signs up advertising with the greyhound track. You would walk past what you would think would be, I don't know, just an industrial estate or something like that. And so I think the industry, along with the political parties who support greyhound racing, have a real interest in suppressing information going out so that people don't actually know this is a big issue, and they're benefiting from that, right? If people don't know this is going on, people aren't able to build up that pressure and put the pressure back on the industry and back on the political parties to end greyhound racing. You know, the sector has a financial interest in making sure greyhound racing continues. They don't want people to know. They don't want people to know. And even we don't see much about this in the media either. There's not, unless there is a big scandal, there's really not much news being published about greyhound racing. The media have a role to play here as well. But I think for those of us who are advocating for greyhounds, part of the job is how do we educate people and let people know this is what's going on and going on with your public money.
Yeah. And because, of course, Gemma's just pointed out too, because you've got the queue in Queensland as well.
Yes.
And also there was actually 2 points, if you wanted to comment on them, is the queue and what that's doing to the state and the greyhounds there. But also the fact that New Zealand, with the phase out, have sent you, the people of Queensland, 80 dogs from New Zealand.
Yeah.
So that must put an amazing amount of pressure on the greyhound industry already there that now have another extra 80 dogs to rehome.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, I'll start with the queue. So this is a new track that has been built out in Ipswich, which is a satellite city from Brisbane, replacing an existing track that is out there. And this is meant to be a state-of-the-art track. It's been built with at least $44 million of public money, as well as money that Racing Queensland has gotten from the betting tax. Like effectively entirely publicly funded. Yeah. You think that the betting tax is public money as well. Yeah. And so it's an $80 million track meant to be state of the art. 5 dogs have already died from injuries. at the queue, and they only started trial racing in March. Not even 2 months. And I've heard from some people who are on the ground, people who are within the sector who do talk to advocates, saying there's all these issues with the track settling into place. The ground isn't in the condition that it needs to be. But I think on top of that, it's important for us to remember, like, it's still a state-of-the-art killing track, and it's never going to be able to keep greyhounds genuinely safe.
And let's be honest too, that might be the only track that the dog races on every week that is state-of-the-art. What about all the trialling, the training, and any other track that they might run on that are substandard? Recurrent injuries that are causing then these dogs to have these major injuries, because that's something the Free the Hounds do. We look into every single dog and all the injuries that each dog has. And we could tell you pretty much which dogs are probably most likely to go next because of the scratchings that they've had through injury, because of the tracks that they race on more than others. So it doesn't matter how much you put into a track, it's not going to necessarily do a particular dog service because of what happens that we don't ever see or hear about.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, dogs that are injured off track, we don't have good data around what's going on off track. We do have one track here in Queensland in Bundaberg that has been closed since September last year because it just had persistent safety issues that they couldn't overcome. And you know what that tells you? Shut it down. Shut it down for good. There is no such thing as a safe track.
I think you put it perfectly, Amy. I haven't heard it like that before. They're either running on a death track or they're running on a state-of-the-art death track. Yeah. And we had a chat to Professor Andrew Knight way back in episode 6 around safety measures on greyhound tracks and other things. It's a really good listen for those who want to know more about how impossible it is to race these poor creatures safely. It's a misnomer. It's a myth. It's an oxymoron, safe racing. So I think, shut it down is the only way to go. Amy, you mentioned the two-prong aspect of supporting candidates and electing MPs who are aligned with greyhound safety, as well as pushing parliamentarians who do know what's going on to either justify their stance or change it. The other prong of that is the people power aspect, and I guess educating people on the ground, helping people understand this still happens and what they can do about it. From your point of view, what's the best way they can help to raise awareness or to become an activist and advocate for greyhounds?
I think you could start the kind of very base level is sharing information on social media. There's lots of organisations, including Free the Hounds, who put out a lot of information to be able to easily share with other people. I think the step up from that is finding other greyhound groups that are working near you and building some connections with other advocates. It is really powerful when you realise that you're not alone, that you're not just shouting into the void, and there's other people who think like you. And so connecting with other groups, either online or in person, maybe finding if you've got a greyhound walking group close to you and being able to connect with other greyhound owners. And then the step up from that would be, what kind of pressure can you put on your local MPs and your state government? Writing letters, asking for meetings, putting this on the agenda when there's state elections coming up, and trying to draw more people into the movement as well. Remember that we are up against some very powerful and well-resourced enemies in the gambling sector and the racing sector. And the only way we're going to be able to do this is to build up a movement of people that is big enough to overcome the kind of strength and resources and wealth of this sector that have a vested interest in continuing greyhound racing. So I'd encourage people to take those steps. Do have a look at Coalition for the Protection of Greyhounds and Free the Hounds and any other organisations that are working online. You can find a lot of them on social media. Connect and see what information you can share. And then as you do get opportunities to talk to other people, to let people know, do you know greyhound racing still happens? It happens with public money. It is extremely violent. And be building up that awareness with other people. So at the very end is getting involved in any kind of protest or direct action. Here in Queensland, we're going to be having a protest on the 7th of June when the Q track that we just talked about will officially open. And so we'll have a group of advocates and greyhounds out there on the 7th of June to be sending a message to the sector and sending a message to the politicians who will be going there as well. And there's actions like this happening in every state that warrant a bit of pushback. So if people are keen to get involved, that's the spectrum of different actions you could take.
Yeah, I love the idea of you can jump in at whatever level you like. And one of the levels I've found the simplest, walking your hounds around. People are fascinated by them. They're just fascinating dogs, and they'll often say, "Oh, is that a rescue?" And it really opens up a conversation to say then, well, actually, they're all rescues, and this is why. So even if you just arm yourself with a few basic facts around injury rates and this kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. You're absolutely right. That's a perfect opportunity to let people know, like, do you know that I think there's 44 dogs that have been killed on tracks this year? Do you know there's public money that goes into the racing industry?
Yeah.
And using that so it's a bit of a moment to share that information.
Yeah, and if you're a lazy activist, that's all you really need to do is keep track of how many dogs have died this year, have it in your back pocket.
The Coalition for the Protection of Greyhounds does have a tracker on the website. You can go on and you will see the most up-to-date data on the number of deaths and the number of injuries as well. So as of today, there's been 44 track deaths this year and 3,800 injuries. And that won't even include the number of dogs who have been euthanized away from the track in the days following. This is already startling data, but even the data that we have doesn't really communicate the scale of the issue.
It's extraordinary. I didn't even know how to respond to that. I'm aware of the numbers, but every time I hear them, 3,800 beautiful creatures being injured so we can chuck a punch on them, it just blows your mind, doesn't it? Mel?
Yeah.
Amy, how will the 80 dogs that were sent from New Zealand, how will they impact what is going on in Queensland already as far as rehoming or...
As we have in every state. Here in Queensland, we also don't have good data on how many racing greyhounds there are. But we do know that there are hundreds of greyhounds that will be waiting somewhere to potentially be rehomed. So, 80 additional dogs coming here. We can assume that a lot of them are going to be channeled into racing. But 80 additional dogs on top of hundreds of dogs that we know are either on tracks or they've been transitioned away from racing who are just sitting there. And the rehoming organisations are already stretched to their absolute limit. They are doing the best they can. The capacity of these organisations to expand dogs really relies on the volunteers running those organisations. But this is not sustainable. The sector should be taking responsibility for what happens to these dogs. But if they know that an unpaid organisation of volunteers are going to take on that work and they're not going to have to spend any time or money on it, of course they're going to take that opportunity. So the kind of advocacy sector has been calling for an end to greyhound exports. And this is something that the federal government are responsible for, that they could say, we won't allow the export of dogs for racing.
Yeah. I actually appeared at the inquiry for the greyhound exports when Maureen Faruqi was chairing that. And I think what you were saying about the community taking on these dogs and the rescue organisations, that's something that when the industry says about all the money that it makes and what it brings to the state and all that, they never look at the negative impacts of it and the cost to not only people involved by physically giving their money over to rescue groups and for allowing these dogs into their home, but then there's also all the mental health issues and things around gambling.
That is never considered. On top of the fact that we know the industry in many states overblow the number of full-time workers they have and overblow the economic impact that they are delivering. And they have an interest in doing that because they know that there are people who are making money off greyhound racing, and they would want everyone to think that actually, look, this is a really important part of our economy, which we know it isn't. And the government could definitely be putting effort into supporting any people who are working in the greyhound sector into other productive careers. Let people use their skills to maybe retrain as a vet, or people could be involved in rehabilitating tracks to turn it into public space. And giving some sort of transition plan for those workers is important. We don't want to leave anyone destitute, but we know that there are better careers, productive careers that people could be working in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that aspect of there's the welfare and the cruelty and the danger aspect that I don't think people are aware of. Almost complementary to that is I wasn't even aware that taxpayers prop this mob up at the front end.
Yeah.
What we do at the back end as well when cleaning up the mess left by this industry also costs a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Amy, what are your final thoughts in terms of what you think would be important for those who, and I'm particularly interested in the people on the fence, because I think, thank you so much for our diehard supporters and those who are ready for change. That's brilliant. But we've got to grow this space. We've got to make it bigger and bring more people in. Yeah. What would you have to say that will facilitate that, bring more people in?
Yeah, this is a really important question, because we know that a lot of people care about animal welfare, but it won't be the top issue. If you look at some of the, like the data from issues tracking polling that goes on in Australia, we know that there are people who care about animal welfare, but it's not at the top of their list. The top of the list being housing, the cost of living, the economy. And so we know that there's this layer of people who are appalled by greyhound racing and would like to see an end to it, but might not be top of mind for them.
Yeah.
And I think one of the key angles that I'm keen to explore, and I think lots of organisations have been exploring, is letting people know about the amount of public money that goes to the greyhound racing sector. Can you imagine, in the middle of a housing crisis and a cost of living crisis, that there are millions and millions of dollars going to this sector every year of public money that could be going into building public housing, money that could be going into properly funding state schools, money that could be going into the healthcare system. And using that as an angle to try and draw people in and say, if you care about animals, what about the fact that our state governments are giving money to this sector? And is that where you want your money to go? And using that as a bit of an angle so that people, when they do go to vote or when they're engaging with their representatives or candidates, that they're asking, why is this money going to this sector when we have so many other things that we need? And sort of using that as one angle to be building up this movement, a movement big enough to push back against the gambling sector and the racing sector. So do arm yourself with some of those facts when you're out chatting with friends or family, or when you're out walking your greyhound. Let people know, do you know the amount of public money that's going into greyhound racing? And the Coalition for the Protection of Greyhounds also has, we've got some very talented organisers and campaigners who have put together a map of the amount of money that is going to greyhound racing in different states. If you go onto the website, there's a page called the Government Funded Greyhound Racing Industry. So here in Queensland, we've got $51 million in betting tax that gets given back to the industry. In New South Wales, there's $22 million that goes to regulator funding. In Victoria, $16.3 million. You'll be able to see this breakdown for each state, and you can with confidence say to people, do you agree with this amount of public money going into greyhound racing? So using that as a bit of an angle to draw people in, and being able to connect with those people that we know animal welfare is their key issue. And for other people who this might not be their top issue, but they are still concerned about it, using this kind of economic angle as well.
Yeah, I love it, Amy. I'm looking at it right now. It's so simple and easy to follow. The numbers for Victoria are absolutely blowing my brain apart. Huge. And I really love the idea of coming at it from those two angles. As I said, arm myself with injury and death stats whenever I go for a walk. I think it would be just as good to arm myself with some taxpayer numbers stats, because I find that when people have to choose between their heart and their hip pocket, unfortunately, most people will veer toward the hip pocket. But if we can give them an argument that says this is hurting your heart and your hip pocket, you'd have a hard time ignoring that. This has been super enlightening, Amy. Thank you so much. You guys are always super well informed, and it's just been lovely, as always, to hear someone who knows what they're talking about and is speaking from the heart and from the gut.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the time, and very appreciative of the work that you're doing, also as a way to get this message out to as many people as we can.
Thanks so much for your time today, Amy. It was an absolute pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you.
And to get to know you a little bit more.
I'm sure it's only the beginning of a beautiful friendship, Mel.
Absolutely.
I hope so.
I hope it doesn't go on too long, though, to be honest. No offence, but let's get this done.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. We can meet each other on the other side.
Exactly.
Just, a greyhound meetup.
Imagine what a party that'll be. I just, because I know it's going to happen, the change is in the air, but it's going to be the biggest celebration when we finally put an end to this stuff.
Yeah, it'll be beautiful.
That was yet again another just wonderful interview with someone who knows what they're talking about and is putting her knowledge and her words into action.
That's right.
Isn't she amazing?
And it was good to hear about Queensland because Andrea Pollard, who was the previous president, was based in WA, and prior to Andrea was Dennis, and he was based in New South Wales.
Oh.
So Queensland, I think, is quite a hard state
Yeah.
for the greyhounds.
Yeah. Are they big on it over there, are they?
Not as transparent, and it's just a big state with a lot of tracks spread out.
Yeah,
So
okay.
as Amy said, people wouldn't necessarily know there's a greyhound track even there.
Right. So it was good to have someone on the ground in Queensland.
I think so. I hope so. I really do. And please, anybody that is listening and you're in Queensland on the 7th of June, there is a peaceful protest at the queue. Join CPG and Animal Kind and other advocacy groups up in Queensland for the opening of the state-of-the-art track that's already killing dogs.
We had a protest recently, didn't we, Mel, through the Hounds for the Sandgroper?
Yeah.
I was stunned. They were lining.
people.
It was really big, and the amount of people driving past, just giving us the old dit. It was 10-1 people saying, "Yeah, good on ya," and then the odd dopey dick giving us the bird.
And the guy that gave he mooned.
Oh, we got a moon, did we?
Yeah, he was walking though. Him and his mate had come out from the track.
Showed his bare ass.
Apparently it was hairy.
Yeah.
Didn't see it.
Okay, it could have been a supportive moon.
But thanks, boys. I bet your mum would be so proud of you doing that.
And also check out the Coalition for the Protection of Greyhounds website because there is some really cool stuff there. Yeah, they really map the info really well, easy to follow. Obviously, check out freethehounds.com.au, and thank you. Keep listening to the podcast, everyone, because only together shall we release the hounds.